I am not a cottage guy, but I do enjoy the generosity of friends every now and then. And some of them do, in fact, have ridiculous cottage rules. But that's part of the charm of going to cottage country. And we in Toronto, if you're a listener who has a cottage, or you know somebody who makes it a tradition to invite you to their cottage, then you know how special it is to be able to go just a few hours away and feel like you're a world away from your troubles in Toronto. But the question now is, are cottages just for the wealthy now? There's been a movement to curb the use of cottages and vacation homes as short-term rentals by municipal and federal governments. These policies, well, they only rob the middle class of the chance to enjoy either owning or renting a cottage. I don't know if that's exactly the case. There's a story that we talked about last week about the township of Muskoka Lakes that, in an effort to curb unruly Airbnbers, is looking to set up a new regulation system around rentals. And on one side, you've got the people who enjoy their cottages all the time, and then every now and then there's an unruly renter next door. But I talked to a former mayor of Muskoka Lakes who disagreed entirely with the concept, saying there are thousands upon thousands of rentals, and there's probably about 10 bad apples out there. And you are using a sledgehammer where a scalpel would be more appropriate. And so, look, I'm a dilettante in this. Let's bring in an expert, Devell Morrison with Bosley Real Estate. Devell, what do you make of this attempt to over-regulate the Airbnb market in cottage country?
Hi, Ben. So, it's funny. I think, were you speaking with Phil Harding by any chance?
I was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with him 1,000%. I mean, not every renter is bad. It's the same way when we talk about landlords and tenants. Not all tenants are bad. Not all landlords are bad. And so why create rules for, maybe the few bad actors that ruin the fun for everybody else? So I am one of those people. My girlfriends and I, we rent a cottage in Muskoka every year because we can't afford to buy one. So therefore we rent one. Yeah. And we're not unruly. We've been, we've been renting the same cottage for 10 years. Yeah. Yeah. So I hate the idea that it's because of those yahoos renting cottages when not everybody renting a cottage is a yahoo. And I also think that a lot of the businesses in Muskoka, there's so many other regions that are sort of clamping down on short-term rentals, whether it's Tiny Township or Muskoka or wherever else. But, there's a lot of small businesses that actually rely on making money off of people like me that rent. And there are a few things about this story that make me think, okay, they may eventually get it right. And at least at the very beginning of this conversation, they are recognizing the financial benefit to short-term rentals. So they're saying, listen, we don't want to ruin that. So let's come up with a system that allows us to maintain order and peace in our area, all while recognizing that these people who do come in for short-term rentals, we benefit from having them here. And also, it's not, we don't want to disincentivize someone from renting out their place. So, we're not going to have like a one strike policy. Instead, they were going to have a demerit point system where, because you can't be in control of everybody. And so there's certain aspects to this original plan. I'm sure they're going to go back to the drawing board a few times that made me think, okay, they're not completely off base here, but they're still missing the mark. I mean, I think one of the things that the township of Muskoka Lakes is pushing for is a minimum 7-day stay. That's ridiculous. I've stayed at a cottage for 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights. Heck, even if I want to stay for 6 nights, I couldn't. I'd have to buy 7 days. So you're disincentivizing people who just want to come up for a couple of days. But also keep in mind, Ben, that the property taxes in a place like Muskoka are quite large. Yeah. So for some of the owners, the only way to offset those taxes is to rent their place out. And you also have a lot of people who have a family cottage. Maybe their parents have passed away. The kids run the cottage, but the kids don't have enough money to keep the cottage. And the only thing that's helping them keep the cottage is the renters. At the end of the day, I run a licensing association an association for licensed short-term rentals in Prince Edward County. It's okay to have licensing. What's not okay is to make the licensing process so egregious that it forces people not to rent out their cottages
Yeah.
because they can no longer afford to have their cottages. And so for me, it does beg the question, have we just decided that cottaging is just for rich people?
Yeah.
It's only for people who don't need to rent their places out. It's only for, someone like me can't rent a cottage from somebody else. And so that's where, for me, some of these regulations, whether it's Muskoka, whether it's Tiny Township, whether it's, any municipality that keeps changing the rules again and again and again for these short-term rentals, you're sort of making this kind of property unaffordable for people. Now, I get it. Some people listening might be out there with the violin going, well, who cares?
Yeah.
And they might think that, oh, great, force people to sell to free up housing for people. But let's be brutally honest about if someone is forced to sell a Muskoka cottage, it is not affordable. Like we need to be really clear about that,
Yeah.
right? So you're not freeing up any kind of affordable homes for anybody because they're not affordable.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that is good to hear is the conversation has not yet ended. What they're doing right now is they're just sort of debating the draft proposal of this. But a lot of what can be what they think they're going to be accomplishing with this in terms of curtailing bad behavior, that's already in the code of conduct of the Airbnbs, of the VRBOs of the world. And
Right.
and if you break those rules, you lose your security deposit and you can't rent again. So I'm unclear as to what they think they're going to accomplish with that isn't already on the books. You also have community standards that are in place in these communities. I mean, you've got noise bylaws in place. So if somebody is
Right.
too loud on their dock, somebody can come and give them a ticket. I mean, this is already stuff that's on the book. So I don't know what else they can accomplish besides, as you said, making it harder for people to rent out their places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that is fair in, I guess, the Canadian context of why is cottaging just for people with money?
Yeah.
It should be for everybody. And to me, this is actually what makes it accessible for everybody. The fact that they could rent a place out or the fact that they could own a place and rent it out. And, you also have got to keep in mind that for a lot of people, the reason why they rent their place out now is because they want to have the mortgage paid off so that they could one day retire in that place.
Exactly.
That they can't afford to buy by themselves.
Devel, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us and have a happy Saturday.
Thanks, you too.